So the first question I like to ask is, it's very interesting to look out in the audience and see mainly women, and look at the audience and it's a whole bunch of guys. But it wasn't through lack of trying. I actually had a lot of interest from a lot of strong female educators in Brisbane and in Queensland. Unfortunately, there wasn't any time for them to come around. But it's quite an interesting dynamic to have in the room, because I know some people in the primary cohort at QUT, there's probably about 4 male primary teachers in the cohort. In early childhood, I believe there's 1. And in secondary, I would say the split would probably be 60% women, 40% men. And I asked my students out on PRAC, some of them hadn't had a male teacher until grade 8. How do you feel that affects a student that hasn't had a male teacher until grade 8, and how do we get more men in the teaching profession, especially in early childhood? So Louis, I'll throw that open to you first, especially from a principal from an early childhood primary background. What do you believe about men in that profession?
Well, firstly, at Maridati, currently within my staff, we have a balance, probably a female and male. So I do think that's important. I have been, because I'm an early childhood background, there's not many of us, I do get that sort of a lot of questions, interviews about males and how do we shift and change that. I'm not so sure really, because as I guess a lot of people have alluded to tonight, I think we need good teachers. I mean, I certainly believe that there are a lot of children out there who need strong male role models. But, you know, as far as, if we're looking at a dropout rate of 52%, you know, in terms of within 5 years of any teachers, you know, I think we need to change. I mean, I think there's many things we need to change and draw in more people, get more excited about what we do, how we do that, guys. And from where I sit and how many people I piss off, really, I'm probably not a good person to ask the question.
Does any other panellist members want to jump in on that one?
Look, I think it reflects the status of teaching and the perception of the community that teaching is a female profession, wrongly. So part of it is how do we change that? And part of it, I think, is actually teachers ourselves talking positively about the profession. You know, the number of teachers I hear, thankfully not very much at St Peter's, but elsewhere I've heard, you know, they said, well, don't become a teacher. Well, you know, and they say it's the best and the brightest, you know, why would you become a teacher? So we actually do ourselves a disservice in terms of the profession. So it's about valuing our profession and talking positively about it, and it begins with us and with you in the room.
But we've got to change the profession, don't we? Yeah. I mean, if that's what the feedback, and it's coming from teachers, that's alarming. So why isn't there shifts and why aren't there changes? And yes, the young blood, I think, to drive those changes is really part of that process. You know, I think what teachers are saying is, you know, I think we should be listening. Yes, there's a lot of whinges. I like some of those comments that you had to say there, but the culture of learning within schools, I think, is just really not sustainable. So I think we've got to change that.
I think the old days, teaching was seen as a nurturing role. So the old days, we're talking the 50s, the 60s, sort of the idea of that then being a female role. It's not the case now. It simply isn't the case. I mean, we're in a space these days where, thankfully, there's far more gender parity than there was. It's still not perfect, but we're getting towards that aspect that it's not really a male or a female role anymore, but that's not permeating through the media. Does that make sense? So actually part of the issue is probably a perception issue caused by the media, I would suggest, and the way that teachers are valued in that sense. It's not just us as a profession talking about what we need to change and with respect to you as educators emerging into the field. It's probably also the way the media reports on teaching. And then the fact that we're driven by NAPLAN, we're driven by stats-driven data. You know?